Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show live in the On Purpose Woman magazine and global community page on Facebook. I'm Ginny Robertson, one of the hosts of the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show. I'm also the founder of the On Purpose Woman global community and the founder and publisher of On Purpose Woman magazine. Today, I'm here with Reverend and author Mika Zachary, and we're going to be talking about how she went from rock bottom to the core. Thanks for being with us, Mika.
Thank you, Ginny. I'm thrilled, like literally thrilled to be here today because I never expected to be. I never thought that I would be in my 50s or my 40s. There were days I doubted I'd make it to 30. So, to be here with you now is really special. So thank you for having me on.
Oh, you are so welcome. And I look forward to a conversation about why that might have been true for you. We're going to be talking about a lot of great stuff today. But to start with, I'd like you to tell our viewers a little bit about you.
I am a ordained minister of metaphysical theology. And what that means is I believe in the highest power, the one source of all that is, but I'm not associated with any particular religion or denomination. I am an energy healer. I'm a Reiki master teacher, and I'm a former romance author, 6 books from Harlequin. And I have just finished the final, please God, final revisions of my upcoming book, which is The Messenger, 8 Keys to Resurrecting Your Life. And I am a proud member of On Purpose Women Global Community.
Yes, and we are proud to have you. And wow, I forgot all about the romance novels, 6 Harlequin books. My goodness.
Yeah.
That is very cool. What a path you've been on, Mika.
It's been a really, as the Beatles would say, it's been a long and winding road.
Yeah, that's a beautiful song, though, isn't it? Yeah. So I want to talk with you about this idea of your hitting rock bottom to get from there to where you are now, and of course about your book that'll be coming out in October. But let's start with this, and you touched on a little bit how you didn't really know if you'd make it to your 40s or your 50s. And it's also a conversation that you and I had recently about how we met or when we met. So tell us what was going on about a decade ago with you.
Everything begins in childhood. My dad was an abusive alcoholic, and my mom was kind of an enabler in a lot of ways. My mother was one of the kindest women you've ever met in your life. And so, unfortunately, my parents modeled unhealthy, toxic relationships for me. So even as a child, I was always sad and I didn't know why. I always just felt lonely, isolated, like there was something missing. And that just continued to build over the years, especially once I discovered alcohol. Alcohol and depression do not mix well, as I unfortunately discovered. I will simply say that there's the blues. Everybody gets the blues, right? You lose a job, you lose a loved one. We all get the blues. But clinical depression, chronic depression, that's the blacks. That is feeling like you are in an abyss so deep and so dark that you cannot find the light and you think you're never going to get out of it. And I think I faked it pretty well. I had a big smile in public. I laughed at jokes. I was, the life of the party when I could actually get myself out of bed and into clothes and out to a party. But when we met, and I'm thinking, gosh, I'm going to date myself here. I'm thinking that was somewhere around 2011, maybe 2012. I met you because of a miracle, to be honest. It was a weekend when my son was going to be at my ex-husband's, so I knew he was taken care of. I knew he'd be fine, but I could not find a single area of my life that I felt like was going well. And I thought, well, if nothing's going right, why am I going to bother to stay here? And so I remember I was in bed planning whatever I was planning at the time. I don't want to trigger anybody. And I got a phone call out of the blue. My friend Shannon Glasgow called and she's like, "Hey, do you want to get coffee?" And the excuses were right at the tip of my lips. I was going to tell her how busy I was and how I had all these plans already. I was going to lie my way through it. But before the words could come out of my mouth, I heard words from somewhere else. I don't know how to explain it other than a voice that wasn't mine. And this voice said to me, "Lean on women of faith until you can lean on your own."
No.
And so, because of that, I said yes to Shannon instead of no. I hauled myself out of bed, took a shower, combed my hair, met her for coffee. And I think that was like a 2.5 hour coffee of just, talking things through. And as a result of that, she invited me to the Women's Expo, which was being held at Baltimore County Community College. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll go. So I came home, I, looked it up on the internet, and the very first thing I saw was a workshop called Getting Out of Your Own Way by some woman named Ginny Robertson.
Wow.
And I thought, well, damn, if anybody needs to get out of their own way, it's me. So I showed up, I met you, and we've stayed in touch all of these years. And I have been so blessed to be part of your On Purpose Woman community. I've made friends here, I've gotten clients here, and it's just been a joy to be in a community where you can show up exactly as you are. And it's okay to be exactly as you are.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And that's such an amazing story for so many reasons. And I don't want to say, oh, yeah, meeting me and going to my workshop must have been a huge turning point in your life, because you were right then beyond what my workshop could have shifted for you, I think. It might have given you some nuggets, if you will, but you needed some deeper, I think, awarenesses or something, right? Did something shift though for you just by saying yes to your friend, that
It
other
did.
things started to happen, a whole series of kind of synchronicities, right?
It did. It's like that 6 degrees of separation.
Mm.
And what I love about it and the message that, I've just been doing my best to share since that time is that even the tiniest pebble still makes a ripple. So saying yes to Shannon brought me to your workshop. At your workshop, I met Sylvia Henderson. Sylvia Henderson introduced me to Glenn Garnes, and Glenn Garnes opened up my world by introducing me to Wallace Wattles and Napoleon Hill and Neil Donald Walsh. He gave me my first copy of The Science of Getting Rich because I was dealing with all kinds of money issues, not recognizing that the money was a manifestation of the deeper issues within me. But that's what started everything. Saying yes, and then yes, and then yes, and then yes, led me to a place of discovering it's like, whoa, if you want to change your life, the first thing you have to do is change your mind.
Yeah, but it isn't that easy, is it?
Oh
It's a
God,
simple
no.
concept, and and that's a metaphysical thought, and there's a lot of teachings around it, but I think sometimes people just distill it down to kind of a dumb place. Well, oh, just change your thinking, Mia, just change your thinking. Well, that's it's true. It's a truth. However, it's not like you just turn off a switch in your head and decide to think something different. It takes work, it takes time, it takes awareness. So, but you got to have that first opening, right? And you got to
So
know that stuff first. And you started learning that in some of those books by some of those old masters, right?
I did. I'm going to agree and disagree slightly with what you said.
Okay.
You said that, the change doesn't happen just as soon as decide. I'm going to disagree in a friendly way. If I hadn't made the decision at some point that I don't want to live with this depression anymore, I want to actually live, not just exist. If I hadn't made that decision, then the work that it took to make that shift happen would never have occurred. It
Okay.
started with homework, to be honest. Glenn had me start a gratitude practice. He's like, at the end of every day before you go to bed and every morning when you wake up, be grateful for 5 things. So, Lord, you have not seen a more begrudging, it's like, okay, I'm awake. Thanks, God. I'm breathing. Thanks for that too. I mean, just attitude for days, attitude for days.
Yeah.
But by creating that habit, I created microscopic shifts that started to build on each other. And it got to a place where it's like, oh, what a pretty cloud. Thank you for that. Look, there's a little dandelion growing out of the sidewalk. Thank you for that. You know, expressing gratitude for what I had allowed me to see all of the other blessings that were available to me.
I do actually agree with you on everything that you said, because I think that maybe I didn't say it quite the way I'd intended it to. I believe we can shift instantly, yet we don't always go from A to Z in a moment. It's like you said, you have to have that instant shift. Something has to shift if you don't want to take that next step, right?
Right.
But
Right.
sometimes I just think sometimes people set up these expectations that it should have happened. The whole thing should have cleared up already, or there's something I'm flawed somehow because I've been changing my thinking. I've been taking these steps. I've been writing in my gratitude journal. Why don't I have more money yet? Why don't I have a relationship yet? So I just think that sometimes maybe we set that up that it's just as easy as changing our thoughts, when changing our
Well,
thoughts is a step, you know. But yeah, if you
we
hadn't made that decision, it is a decision, isn't it?
it
Um,
absolutely is. It absolutely is. And because we live in a culture here in America that just rewards instant gratification, everything you want is right at the snap of the fingers, very few of us want to do the work. And it is work. It is absolutely work. And if I could share a message with anybody who is feeling those blacks, who is down in a depression, don't give up. Don't give up, because it's depression, it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. And I don't know enough. I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV. I don't know enough about it to say, oh, there's always something there. But, you know, I just went through a very public depressive episode about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I wasn't returning phone calls to people. I was having trouble getting out of bed. And I was like, oh my God, I thought I was done with this. I thought I was done with this. But when you feel like you're going in circles, you have to remember you're actually in a spiral. It's almost like a spiral staircase. And so when things look like they have in the past, it's usually because you're in the same place, but you forget that you're higher up.
mm.
So to me, it felt like, oh my gosh, I have crashed into a depression. But it was probably more like coming from here to here, you know? So
That's
yeah,
just such a great example, I think, of what you're talking about, because I have never experienced what I believe is clinical depression. I love how you said that's the black, and then we all have the blues. I've called it situational depression. Okay, I'm
yeah,
down because of this, but I love the analogy between we all get the blues. That's not depression. Depression is something very different. I think it's really important for people to understand that, because when we say, if someone like me who doesn't think she's experienced that says to you, oh, I know what you're going through, Mia, I don't. You know, so I think that distinction is important. And then it's important to listen to people when they are talking about what is going on with them. I didn't see your very public episode. You mean on social media or something, or
yeah,
you
I
just come,
posted on
yeah.
Facebook and I just said, I don't have the bandwidth to deal with you guys right now, and I need you to love me through this.
Yeah.
You
But
know?
is that a huge change from what you would have done years ago? Would you would have just stayed alone and you would have never outed yourself, right?
I would never have outed myself.
Yeah.
I would have been too embarrassed. And that was hard for me. That was hard for me. There was a level of shame that came up.
Mhm.
You know, here I have been bragging about how I've conquered my depression. I threw away my exit strategy. Um, and here I am again down in the dumps with people mad at me because I'm not returning phone calls. So yeah, that was brave. And I'm gonna just say I'm proud of my brave.
Yeah, it was very brave, I think, because you don't know what's going to come back at you when you do that. But it sounds like at some point that doesn't matter. Your health, your mental health matters much more than what may come back at you. So thank you for that. Thank you for doing that. It's a great example for other people, I think, to see, wow, she did that and I admire her. So maybe I can do that too, or do my
Oh, I
version of
hope
that,
so.
you
I
know.
hope so. You know, it's hard. I was talking to someone just Sunday, and his son's best friend has just taken his life. And
Oh,
so, you know, the father is trying to talk to his adult son and saying, it's like, well, if you need anything, just reach out. If you start feeling anything, just reach out. And I said, Aaron, do me a favor. Don't put the onus on reaching out to the person who's struggling.
mm,
Please just text him every day. Let him know you're here. You pick up the phone. You're the one who's healthy. You know, don't put the onus on the person who is having a dis-ease, a mental dis-ease. You know, this is not easy to go through. And to put the responsibility for the phone call on your son, that's just one more thing. And you don't know what one thing is going to be the too much thing, that
yeah,
needle
yeah.
that broke the camel's back, or what, or the straw. I think I'm getting my camels and my straws and my needles confused. But
You little metaphors, are they both scrambled,
I
huh?
am mixing my metaphors today. And on today's cooking class, we're going to mix camels and straws and needles.
I think the people who need to be following you will be following you just perfectly. So, but your point is such a good one, and it's similar to I think what people, I learned this a number of years ago when we're with someone or we have a friend who's going through some severe grief, to reach out and say, "Let me know if there's anything I can do for you," or "Let me know if you need something." And I read this book one time that says, just do something, whether they need it or not, just do something. Show up with some food. Even if they don't need it, you showed up with some food. Don't let them decide, because they're overwhelmed at this point. So it's the same kind of thing. You're not thinking about any of that. You just want to feel better. And so thank you. Thank you for saying all that. I think it's really important things that we can use in lots of different arenas in our life when we deal with people.
Absolutely.
So you have this new book that you've been such a labor of love for you over a few years now, right?
Uh, two, 2.5 years
2.5 years, yeah.
today. Oh my gosh.
Is it really?
I just realized, I think it's 2.5 years today. Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. And it's called The Messenger, 8 Keys to Resurrecting Your Life.
Yeah.
So how does this book relate to all that we've talked about up to this point about what you had dealt with, your past, your background, your all those years in between when you started taking those steps? How does this relate to that? And why did you write this book? Why did you feel like you just had to write? Because you had to feel like you had to write the book or you wouldn't have kept going, I don't think, all this time.
That is true. How it relates to the depression, I feel that once I was introduced to those personal development books and started exploring, who am I?
Yeah.
Is this physical body my identity? And realizing that we shift our identity depending on who we're talking to. You're one person with your parents, someone different with your children, someone different again with your friends, and someone different altogether with your employer. And so it was really about me trying to figure out, who am I? And in that, I realized whose I am, as well as who I am. Um, I hope I hope that what this book does is bring the concept of humanity and divinity together. I am not a biblical scholar. I am not pretending to be. There are people who've been doing this their whole lives, and I'm not trying to step into their lane. But the premise behind the messenger is that at some point, the person that most people call Jesus Christ, a Jewish architect from first century Palestine, was at some point human and divine. And in my mind, if he wasn't perfect and yet was able to experience this beautiful resurrection, this enlightenment, then that's possible for the rest of us also. I think more than anything, I want the messenger to be a message of hope for people. Um, what was your other question? Oh, you asked me at some point you must have felt compelled to write this book. Well, it's like I fought against this book tooth and nail for 2 months. For 2 months. It actually started, I'd gone to a women's spiritual retreat in Hot Springs, North Carolina. And during one of our breathwork meditations, I think the last night, Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening, um, I'm laying on a yoga mat, pillows with all these other women around, and we're being guided through this meditation. And, in the pitch dark, I felt like somebody was holding me. I felt like somebody had their hands under my shoulders and someone else was holding like my head. And that energy felt familiar. So I recognized Mother Mary's presence, but wasn't quite sure who this other woman was. And throughout the vision, God, I was shown such amazing, amazing things and given such a message of hope. And in and among that, they gave me the book title, gave me the subtitle, gave me the themes for the chapters, and basically said, we need you to write our story. Well, at the end of this meditation, I'm like, yeah, right. I think you meant the chick on the yoga mat next to me. I'm not a Christian. I don't consider myself a religious person. And you want me to do what with the Christian Bible? Are you kidding? So I really just fought against it for months. And in fact, I went so far in the opposite direction. I'm like, well, I'm going to prove that historically Jesus never existed. Therefore, I don't have to write this book because, this guy is not even a thing, right? But what I discovered, as happens so much in life, the more I learned, the less I believed, and the stronger my faith became. That there was more than just was what human beings had written in a book, that I don't have to wait for the afterlife. I can have a life of love, a life of connection, a life of joy. I can have that in the here and now. And once I recognized that, well, the next 18 months were spent just researching and reading everything I could get my hands on and just kind of putting this book idea together, but really allowing myself to be guided. Mary Magdalene spoke to me right before the end of that meditation, and she gave me my new name, the name that's on the book. She said, your name is Lena now, and you are to walk the path of the Magdalene and teach. So that's what I'm attempting to do with this book.
So the more you research, the more you learn, the more you, I guess, went deeper and deeper, you had to do it then. There was
I
no
had to do
choice
it then.
anymore. It was your assignment, it sounds like.
It really was because, the Christian text, there's huge gaps in it. If the New Testament was a stage play, imagine a character you've never heard a single thing about suddenly coming on stage and going, "Hey, I saw this guy that we thought was dead," and then you never hear from her again. This is the worst written play. Shakespeare wouldn't even do this.
Too many
So I'm
gaps.
like, okay, well, what's missing? What needs to be filled into these holes? And so I started looking outside of the Orthodox books to the books that people call apocrypha. They call them Gnostic. They call them heresy. But the thing about stories, the thing about books is they start off as stories in someone's head or in an oral tradition. And it's not until hundreds of years later that we're like, okay, this is the version we're going to go with. Yes, it's been rewritten 1,000 times, but we're going to go with this version. Well, that means all of these other stories and all of these other versions got left out. And so that's what I went looking for. Why do I feel like I have been left out of my life since I was a kid? And how many other women might feel like I do, that they have been left out of their lives, that they don't have a voice, that they have been silenced because somebody decided, oh, you told us what you need to tell us, and we don't need to hear anything else from you ever again.
Wow. And so you then needed to tell Mary Magdalene's story.
I don't know if I'm telling her story. I'm telling a story.
You're telling a story about her in a way that you'd never read a story about her, I guess. Is that fair to say?
That is very fair to say.
Okay.
So, for example, I just held my first spiritual retreat a couple weekends ago, and I asked my guests that first night, well, what do you know about Mary Magdalene? And they said, oh, well, she was a whore. She was a prostitute. And I said, can you show me in the Bible where it says that? And of course they can't, because it's not in there. That was something that Pope Gregory said in an Easter homily over what, almost 600 years after Christ died. He's the one who said, oh, well, if she had 7 demons in them, those must be the 7 deadly sins. Therefore, it must have been sex related, and she must have been a whore.
Wow.
So, because if you, I've experienced this. I don't know if you have. I don't want to make assumptions, but a lot of women I know have experienced that, if you step out of line, if who do you think you are? If you stand up for yourself and your ideas, you're immediately labeled with one of 2 B words. You're either bossy or you're bitchy.
Mm.
And the best way to ruin a bitchy, bossy woman's reputation is to bring it back to sex, because if you call her a whore and a slut and all these other names, now you've discredited her and anything that she might have had to say. So I started thinking, what could those demons have been? Well, of course, when you do the research, you have to put things into context, and you have to remember that yes, there were doctors in first century Palestine, but you would not want any of them treating you today, right? We're talking about a time when people thought things like diabetes or epilepsy or birth defects were caused by demons. Everything's caused by demons. So it's a coded language from the Hebrew culture. And I'm not Jewish, so if I'm misspeaking, somebody write it in the comments and let me know, because I'm not trying to make anything. But I started thinking, what could those demons have been? Could it have been a great illness, or could it even have been anxiety and depression? Is that possible? And so I started thinking, what would get a woman labeled as a slut in first century Palestine? Well, getting raped would do that, because you're no longer pure. You're no longer marriageable. You're never going to have a husband and a
Okay, one of us is frozen. I don't know if it's you or me, Mia. I've lost Mia, so I'm going to stick here and stay live, and hopefully she can come back in and we can finish our conversation. So if you're watching, just stick around for another minute or two. There she is. Are you there? I can't hear you, Mia. Can you hear me?
Okay, so I've got a thunderstorm here, and I guess
that may be. Well, I was glad you were able. I just told anybody who was watching to stay put. And let's see, you were talking about how do you discredit a woman? Even in current day, how do you discredit a woman? So what might have happened to women back in Palestine in the first century or the first year? It might make them be labeled a slut or a whore. And you'd mentioned being raped. A woman being raped could. So take off from there, if you will.
All right, I'm going to see if I can set my phone down where my laptop used to be so I don't have to hold it. There we go. So I started thinking, like, why would someone be called a slut at that point in time? And I started thinking, well, what if Mary Magdalene had been raped? What if the possibility of having a husband and children and a family and a normal life had been taken away from her? So that's what I decided for the messenger, was that the 7 demons that were cast out of her were actually the demons of trauma. It was denial and survivor's guilt and, rejection and all of those other things that, we as victims of sexual abuse go through. And then I thought, well, if that's what was cast out of her, and she obviously had a relationship with Jesus. I'm not going all Dan Brown. I have no idea whether or not they were married, although let's again put it in cultural context. Wouldn't it have been very unusual for a first century Jewish man not to be married? But I'm not touching that right now. In my book, they just have a very close, deep, and personal friendship. And she is, I think it was Pope Francis just a couple years ago, elevated Mary Magdalene's memorial to a feast day and kind of put to rest for the Catholic Church. No, she was never a whore. She was the apostle to the apostles. And the Greek word apostolos means a messenger sent on a special commission. And so since she is the one who saw Yeshua ben Joseph, his spiritual resurrection after his body was executed, I believe that she, for me, is the messenger. And, quite frankly, quite honestly, growing up with an abusive alcoholic father, I really can't relate to, our Father who art in heaven. It doesn't resonate with me. So what I've chosen to do in the messenger is a gender neutral deity that I've chosen to call El Aheva, El meaning power and Aheva meaning love. So in the messenger, I address God, which is a title, not a name, as the power of love, because I think for me, it just works better. I don't know how else to say it. Thinking about the old white guy with a long beard that used to hang in my grandmother's dining room, that guy was creepy. He was always just waiting for me to mess up so that I could be punished. But I like George Lucas's idea of the Force. There is an all-powerful, omnipresent energy that is around us and within us. And how we choose to use that spark of divine power that's within us kind of is whether, we have good.
Mia, can you hear me? Looks like she might have frozen up again. So we're having.
Oh my goodness.
There we
this
go.
is insane. I'm still here. Hello.
I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, so here's the message. Here's the bottom line message, if you can still hear me. We are all threads in the tapestry of each other's lives. And if you pull a thread, if you fray it, if you cut it, if you damage it, then you damage all the rest of us also. I think that's the bottom line message before we get cut off again by this storm.
That is an amazing message. Imagine if we just lived 50% of our life, if we all lived just half of our time on earth believing that and acting as though, right? 10% would be great if we were all doing it, wouldn't it? It would be exponential shifts and changes in how we live on the planet. So such a beautiful message. And I love how you've elevated Mary Magdalene, because I know, and I grew up Christian, but I didn't know, I read the Bible as a kid. I decided I wanted to. I wasn't, I went to Sunday school and all, but I still have my little red Bible. I had a red Bible, and I would check off every verse that I read. And there's a lot of checked off verses. I don't know that I understood a lot of what I read, but there was something comforting to me about reading it. But I never really, there were no role models for me in the Bible. And I used to want to be Catholic because they had Mother Mary we didn't talk about Mother Mary in the Methodist church, and so I wanted some women to kind of know, well, what role were you guys playing back then? You couldn't have just been doing the laundry, washing the clothes on the stone by the river, So I love what you've done with this, and I've read some of it, but I'm waiting because you gave me some pre-stuff that I've read, and I'm going to support you when the book comes out because I think it's really exciting. So tell everybody how they can get the book and how they can also find out more about you and the work that you do.
Thank you. I'm sure you just said some really beautiful things, but you were frozen on my end and I didn't hear a word of it.
Wow. So I don't know, maybe it's my computer too, even though I haven't been kicked off yet, but I said some great stuff. I don't know if the other people will hear it either, but tell everybody how they can find your book when it comes out. And you're also running a special promotion, right? Oh dear. Now I think you're looking frozen to me.
Can you still hear me?
I didn't hear most of what you just said.
All right, let me try again.
Back and forth, yes.
All right, I'm going to speak quickly. www.themessenger8key, KEY.com, the messenger number 8.com, messenger8key.com. I'm all discombobulated now. This is going to be either the best or the worst interview I've ever done. But so the book is on pre-order at Barnes & Noble. When you go to the website, you'll be able to click through it. You'll also see a tab that says free copies. What I would love more than anything, because October is my birthday month, I would love to give away a whole bunch of copies. So if you pre-order the book between today and September 30th and show me, prove it to me with a receipt, I will send you a PDF copy of the book that you can read while you're waiting for your hardcover. Oop, here we go. I'll get that later. While you're waiting for the hard copy of the book, if you pre-order it and prove it to me, I will send you a PDF copy that you can read while you're waiting. And then my request is, once you get your physical book, and they will all ship out, I believe, October 1st, once you get your book, give it away, gift it to somebody, and take a video of them. Oh my gosh, you got this for me? I'm so excited to have a copy of The Messenger. Take a video, tag me in it, and once you do that, I will autograph a copy and replace the one that you gave away.
Wow.
So, yeah, anybody who's willing to do that, because I just want this book to go out and help people. It does absolutely no good sitting here on my shelf or falling off of my shelf, as the case may be.
Beautiful gift, Mia. Thank you for that. And right after this, go into the comments on the magazine page and put in that information, put in the links for me in case anything didn't get, and it'll be interesting to see what they hear and what they don't hear on this video. And then once I'll share.
So
what was that?
I've got thunder booming, so I don't know what they're going to hear.
I can't hear it, but and then once I share in the next couple of days, I'll share in the group and also on my personal page, and I'll tag you. You can go in and do the same thing. Just fill in kind of any of the blanks of how they get the book and what they can do with it once they get their hard copy. So anything else that you want to say before we wrap up here today? Any final words of wisdom or thoughts from you and your wise self?
I hope that I am a messenger of love and acceptance and healing and connection. And that would really be my prayer for other people too. Whatever you've gone through, whatever you're going through, you matter. You're important. I don't know who you are or where you are. We've never met, we've never spoken. But the one thing that I know for certain is that your thread is important to the tapestry of all of our experience of life. So please don't pull it early.
Wow. Please don't pull it early, because someone will be missing that thread.
Somebody will.
A lot of people. You never know what kind of impact you have or will have down the road. So
and Ginny's a great example of that. Ginny had no idea when she gave that workshop what her thread was going to lead me to. And so the same message for everybody who's listening: stay here. Depression lies. Stay here.
And let me just add to that and say, if you've got, whether you have depression or not, if you've got this gift in you that you feel compelled to share, people are waiting for it. People are waiting because that thread is already there, kind of needs a little help kind of being woven into the rest of the tapestry. So share those gifts, don't sit on them. Don't hold your breath and hope that, like Mia, hope that this thing I've been told to do will just go away. If I push it far enough, it'll go away. No, obviously you were meant to write this book, and all things lead to where we are right this minute, don't they?
They do.
It's kind of a full circle moment in a way, right? So thank you, Mia. Thank you for being here and sharing your gifts, your wisdom, and beautiful stories. And I know that there will be people who will be touched by what you've said today and maybe helped. Who knows, right? Who knows?
I hope so. But I thank you. I thank you for the platform that you have built over the last 21 years. I thank you, Ginny, for creating a space where people can feel safe and seen and heard. And I hope that if anybody has gotten any kind of benefit at all from our discussion today, come on over, check out the group, check out On Purpose Woman, check out the global community that Ginny has been building for the last 2 decades of her life, and see the power of threads when we tie ourselves to other people.
Well, thank you. Could you make a video about that, please?
Oh, I think I just did.
So thank you again, Mia, and thank all of you for being here with us to see the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show live in the On Purpose Woman magazine global community Facebook page. We have 2 other interviews this week. On Thursday, Catherine Yarborough, who is the other host of the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show, will interview Karen DeGrava about how yo-yo dieting isn't fun. And then on Friday, I'll talk with Elizabeth McCain about who are we now in a post-pandemic world. And it's interesting because it's looking like we may not really be in a post-pandemic world right now. A lot of things are shifting and changing. But what we're going to be talking about, though, is re-entry. Like when you are ready to get back in to maybe doing some of what you were doing before, maybe shifting things entirely. How do we do that as a community, as people, as part of the threads in that tapestry? I'm probably going to use that metaphor a lot, Mia. So check that out. And if you want to know the rest, we have a few more interviews this month. You can go to the On Purpose Woman magazine website, onpurposewomanmagazine.com, and on look in the table of contents, there will be a link there to our ad, which has all of the videos that we'll be doing. And please go over to our YouTube page. It's called the On Purpose Woman Global Community. That's the name of the channel on YouTube. And you can see over 70 other interviews that Catherine and I have done with real women who have a real purpose and are out there talking about it to inspire, educate, and just elevate other people so they maybe take those steps themselves or do something with their own greatness. So thank you all for being here again.
Thank you, Ginny.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.